I would have to say the baobab tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say the living thing that I find I have a closest affinity to, or I feel the most like, is a baobab tree for sure. I feel like it's the way it's the branches are very similar to what is above ground is similar to what is below ground. I feel like that's a lot of how I am. And it's also like a thick trunk and like strong. It's very hard to take down a baobab. But the insides are very you couldn't make furniture from a baobab tree wood. It's too soft on the inside. It's this like strong looking tree on the outside and like all mush on the inside. That's such a hard question because I have so many. But I will have to go with one of the more recent ones. Um, I had just been up to this place called the Amani Nature Reserve. It's on the western part of the Usambara mountain here in Tanzania. It's about an hour and a half from where I live, and it's beautiful. There's like 300 endemic species endemic to that ecosystem. Beautiful, beautiful. And I took my son up there when he was 3 months old. And so he currently holds the record of being the youngest tourist up there. Um, and it was this beautiful evening sunset. And I just like strapped him on me, had a sling, and we walked around. And I went past these trees. And anytime I love vines. I love vines because they are they are such an expression of the growth of an ecosystem, the growth of a forest. They work with what already exists, and they're very good at making things work. So we're walking past this. It was like you have a sharp drop on one side, and then you have the forest on the other side, and we were just walking past there, and I noticed this. I'm still to find out. I'm still yet to find out what that plant is, but it has a very interesting flower that just like shoots up out of the main plant and into it. It's hard to describe, but it was like a bright orange red, and it's just this one thing shooting up like that. And so I'm staring at that, and I look to the side and I see this vine, and I'm following it up the tree, and the leaves keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger as I'm going up. And I follow it up and I follow it up, and this tree was so tall. Had I not stopped to like follow the vine, I wouldn't have seen it. And then just in that moment, my son, he was asleep in that moment. He just like sighed, this like and just like cuddled more into me. I was like, oh, it's beautiful moment. But yeah, that's one of my, it's the most recent one.
Oh my god, that's such a beautiful moment, and that it
It
like
was.
connected with your son. I don't know. It almost
Yeah.
felt like I don't know. Do you think he felt at home?
It's very possible. He's a very attuned boy, so I think he must have felt something. Because he still sighs every once well when he's frustrated or like deeply satisfied, he does this like, and it's a very particular sigh. So for him to have this like sighed in that moment in his sleep, I was like, oh, okay, something.
Oh, yeah, I see. I see. It's the forest.
Why do you
Yeah.
like the forest so much?
Oh, because I, I mean, partly because I love darkness. And a thriving forest is dark most times. It's dark and it's full of creatures and it's full of possibilities. And I love the darkness for the same reasons. It's full of creatures and possibilities. Sometimes creatures to be afraid of, but you know, um, but it just the part of it that is not rational is that it feels like home. It feels like home in a way that I can't explain. I joke and say to people, I think in my most recent past life or a very close parallel life, I am a tree. I am a plant or a bunch or I am a forest, who knows? But it feels like home. I feel the most like home. Excuse me. I feel the most at home in forests. It just, and I can't explain it. It's like everything suddenly is so insignificant. All of those things that I think are big and insurmountable. Suddenly, I look at this mighty tree that at some point will die, but it will have left seeds. And so it will continue to live on. And I see the different trees, the different plants, each one absolutely beautiful and so different from each other, and each of them so significant, so necessary for the existence of the other. And it feels like a way of being that we have totally disconnected ourselves from, and that is so necessary for the thrive of human beings, community. I see community in forests, and it's beautiful. It just makes my heart sing.
Regenerative culture in, I could use few words, but I'll use a couple. It's when you think of any aspect of culture, of human existence, any aspect of human existence, but experience it and think of it through the regenerative perspective. So, from education, economics, agriculture, um, arts, music, all of that, anything, like all of the aspects brought together that make up culture, but then perceived and experienced and expressed through the regenerative lens. That is regenerative culture. Food systems, food sovereignty, seed sovereignty. My work with food sovereignty has mostly been helping people establish forests or forest gardens, regenerative agriculture, basically. And I've been part of a couple of really cool projects. Some of them start off as like one of the projects I'm really proud of. It started off as a memorial garden for a family that had lost one of its children to, I think, to lupus. And so they wanted us to, my partner and I, in this work, to create a garden that would hold the spirit of their daughter. And so it started off like that, but it ended up being a food forest, a really beautiful food forest. And that I can't help but sneak food into places. So even when I'm asked to like make pretty gardens, I'm like, it can be pretty with food in it too. So anyway, so that's the food sovereignty aspect, is just growing food the best way we can for the best quality. And then with seed sovereignty, a lot of it has been writing. I mean, part of the food sovereignty work is seed saving, but a lot of the projects that we're part of are still quite young, and we're still moving towards seeding before we can start like seed saving and seed banking and all of that. So in the meantime, a lot of my work around that has been mostly writing and, being in space where I can talk about it, helping connect organizations and, such. And then we have our own project here in Tanga, Tanzania, where at the center of it is a children's home. And then we're building a thriving ecosystem around that, but we'll get to that. But food sovereignty is a huge part of that. With education, one of the things that I realized, or we realized within my community that I work with, which is mostly my family, my mom, dad, brother, and his wife. And we all sort of arrived at different points and in different ways at a point of deep dissatisfaction with the education systems that we have available to us. And they are they're not built to develop innovators. And the world that we're in right now, the world that we're moving towards, it needs innovators. It needs us to be educating our children in a way that celebrates and resources their creativity, their curiosity, their ability to ask questions and travel with those questions and follow their curiosity. And so one half of that question that we're holding right now is, what are some of the ways that African history, African culture, African cultures have held answers to the questions, to modern day questions, but because of the colonial disruption, we don't have access to the knowledge and the sciences and the technologies and the wisdom of our ancestors. That's one half of the question. The second half of the question is, how can education be more nature based? How can it be completely in tune with our natural environment? And also be a pathway to the realization that we are not human, and then that outside place is nature, that we are an expression of the same thing that we call nature. We're not something other than that. So if that then leads to what we started with, compassion. How do we facilitate the growth of that perspective, of that being the center from which our children perceive the world around them, perceive each other, perceive themselves in relation to the ecosystems within which they exist? So those are the questions we're holding right now around education. So an African-centered, nature-based curriculum. And we're in the early stages of developing that, mostly research right now. But my child is going to be, I don't want to say patient zero, but like he's going to be. The whole plan is that he is the first one that, in the community that goes through that. So, you know what they say about firstborns? Parents are experimenting with firstborns. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I will do my best to keep this short. But seed sovereignty is, so it begins at the premise of the seed in itself is sovereign. So seed sovereignty is described in the mainstream spaces where it is mainstream as the ability of the farmer to determine their interaction with the seed and how it is planted, how it is grown, how it is traded, how it is then put back into the soil to then further produce that, good quality plants. I see where we're coming with that, but I disagree with that definition. I think it is extremely anthropocentric because it still centers the human being. And we can't be talking about seed sovereignty with the human being at the center. Both the words put together, seed and sovereignty, refers to the sovereignty of the seed. The seed in itself, before human beings came into the scene, seeds were going into the soil, creating plants, developing into plants that then would fruit, and then the seed would had devised, the entire plant, and therefore the fruit, and therefore the seed, devises a way to be spread. If it's held in a fruit that is edible, then an animal will eat it and take it to transport it to the next place. If it's one that needs to go through the digestive system, a bird will eat it. It has to poop it, so then it becomes available to grow in the soil. It's coconut, for instance. Coconut has water inside, making it so it can float away and land on its next island, and then we have more coconuts coming up. So each of them have their own intelligent system that allows them to be spread and make it to the next place where they can propagate. That to me is seed sovereignty. Where we come in as human beings is in honoring that. And in honoring that, what we do is we ensure that all our activities that are in interaction with seeds um, make it so the seed's natural way of being is honored. We have veered far from that. And what we have done now is we're doing a lot of genetic manipulation. A lot of this genetic manipulation is based on the argument that we need to be more food secure. If you look at how we've ended up at food insecurity, it's because our agricultural methods do not support the thriving of our soil. So we're doing monoculture. You have the same plant on hectares and hectares of land. Forests do not behave like that. You walk into a forest and you do not have one plant on thousands of acres. You walk into a forest and in one spot, there's a whole bunch of different plants growing. And they figured out harmony. They figured out how to be in that space together because the tall tree provides shade for the next canopy. The one at the bottom provides ground cover. The one in the middle provides an aroma that keeps away certain bugs, and therefore protects the tall tree and the little one, and it's an ecosystem, it's biodiversity, which ensures the soil is constantly growing richer and richer. That's not how we're doing agriculture right now. And because we've changed that, the quality of our seeds has gone down, and therefore the quality of our food, the plants has gone down, crops has gone down, and therefore our food. But instead of going back to the basic truth of we need biodiversity for our food to be rich, what we're trying to do is synthetically provide the nutrients that are needed in our crops into the soil. And what we're doing is creating junkies of our food, of the plants, and then so on and so forth. So you can see the cycle that we've created. And so the whole seed sovereignty movement states that the seed in itself is sovereign. Therefore, the farmer that interacts with that seed needs to have the capacity to interact with the seed in a way that honors it, like another animal would, like any other animal would, But now what we have is a lot of the huge agricorps, the multinational agricorps coming in, and agricultural corporations coming in and taking away indigenous seeds. And that's, of course, the other part of this, that it's an indigenous seed that's a lot of indigenous seed varieties have gone extinct in the last decade or two. And so that's another part of the seed sovereignty movement, is a fight for our indigenous seeds and for our indigenous seeds to be grown in their indigenous spaces, their native spaces, by the people whose culture has held the songs and the prayers and the arts and the stories surrounding these seeds. So that is by no means a short answer, but I think
It's a great answer.
but it's a great answer, so we'll go with that. And my partner and I named our work Courageous Forest because it's the spirit of the little girl that we're wanting to bring back into this space. That curiosity, that free frolicking spirit, like, through the forest. It's just like everything is interesting and everything is a reason for our whole world to be traveled into. That is what the spirit of what we're creating with Kairetu. And so through Kairetu's Forest, we've done some of the work that I mentioned to you, including the Memorial Garden in Kenya. But we've been yearning for this, to give Kairetu a home. And we've been listening in for where do you want your first home to be? And we've gotten an opportunity here in Tanga to take on, to steward some land that is right next to the land that we have to set up the children's home. So what it would be is that it would be right next to that, and it has two baobab trees, not one, but two baobab trees on it. Old baobab trees. And there's two baobab trees on it. And the moment, like when we took a walk on the land before we acquired it, where the children's home is going to be, I remember looking over to the left and seeing that land and going like, that is where my home is. And then this is what, maybe 4 years down the line now. But an opportunity has come up to be able to take on that land as well and have that be where we grow the food forest that will nourish the community center that's coming up with the children's home and the education center. So, and our vision with that is to showcase and demonstrate the possibility of collaboration between our natural spaces and our built environment, human built environments, to demonstrate what's possible in terms of quantity and quality of food when grown. There's a word I'm looking for within agroforestry methods. And then further to showcase and demonstrate what's possible when this same space is a learning space for children and is designed with play and learning in mind. So that's our work right now. We've been saving small. When you have such projects, it's like any money that comes in has a million things to do. So we're currently in the process of saving and fundraising to be able to like finish paying for the land and then go into developing it. But it's just, it's such a dream to be able to hold and grow and then have a place that we can actually materialize that. It's such a gift. So that's what's simmering. It's one of the projects that I'm holding right now, and I'm holding it with such excitement. But I'm very keen to have immersive spaces for pregnant women and for women to come into this space and really get in tune with the power of pregnancy and this magical portal that we are when we are with child and moving towards birth and the postpartum period. It's a really powerful time in a person's life. So to be able to even further empower it by going and being in natural spaces and just receiving from the earth by walking barefoot, taking food that's been grown where you're walking and harvesting together and, cooking together, singing together, and just spending time together. As you can tell, I love to sing, as I've mentioned it a couple of times, but even more, I love to dance. So dancing together. But that's the kind of nature immersive experiences I think of. And then, of course, like I mentioned, just learning and playing, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm excited for the one that's coming up towards the end of this week or next week. And I'll have some cool photos to send you.
Yes, please do. Yeah, we would
Yeah.
love to see them.
Also, you mentioned the interconnectedness of them. I mean, even just in explaining all of what I do, you can see the interconnected nature of them. Where the better the quality of our food, the better the quality of our relationship with our environment, our soil, the plants, the ecosystem, the better the biodiversity holding us up. The better the quality of our food and our seeds, the better the quality of nutrition that's available to mothers, for women and girls, and female identifying persons through menstruation and birth. So it's all tied together. And then, of course, all of that is held within education. How we educate then advises all of everything else. So it's inevitable. And like I've said before, we have to be willing to see and live from this interconnectedness, because it's a separation that has landed us in this mess that we're in right now. So it absolutely has to be interconnected. I think I referred to it in our email as being interconnected sightedness, being
Yeah.
interconnected sighted, you know,
Yeah.
having interconnection sightedness. Um, and it's absolutely necessary right now.
As is the case, I suspect, with a lot of people that get into poetry, my angry teens, um, where it feels like it's all too much and not enough, and I'm angry about everything and nothing makes sense, and I know everything. Um, so that was when I started writing poetry. I had a lot of body image issues growing up. Um, and poetry felt like where I could safely say what I needed to say, express what I needed to express without anybody saying anything back, because it was poetry. It was art. I mean, I'm sorry, but you can't have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
And so it started off just as writing in my journals and, not for anybody to see. And then a teacher stumbled upon my work, my English teacher, and he just fell in love with it and he kept encouraging me to write. And then my Kiswahili teacher stumbled upon my Kiswahili poems and called shairis in Kiswahili, and he wanted me to write more. And I thought, oh, okay, so maybe there's something to my writing. Cool, I'll keep writing. And then fast forward to after high school, maybe 5, 6 years after high school, I got into the Nairobi art scene, poetry scene, and I took part in a couple of like poetry events, spoken word events. And then really fast forward to like COVID times, and then I wrote my first book. And I was I wanted to celebrate the spirit of the feminine. I wanted to celebrate everything that is um woman, that is feminine. It started off as a desire to celebrate my mother when she turned 50, but I missed that mark. And so I kept writing though. And then during COVID, I was homeless, I was jobless, I had like nothing going on but big dreams. Um, and a friend of mine reached out to me and she was like, Kai, you've been talking about putting together this book. This is when medicine is only effective when it is available for people to take it. Can you make your medicine available? I was like, yes, ma'am. So so I set about to it, and in about a month and a half, I had my manuscript. I sent it to the publisher. They loved it. It got published, and that was in 2020. And I'm now currently working on this is a co-authorship with a friend of mine. This is a children's book. We're still trying to figure out what age, but it's a children's book. And because of how we both are, we're very nature inclined. We're very interested in the trees and the birds and the bees and, and the dogs and the everything. So it's very nature based, this book. But yeah, that would be my second uh book. But yeah, that's my journey with poetry. I would say, yeah, actually, I do have a tip. Um, I would say write like nobody's ever going to read your work. Write it for yourself. Write it like nobody will ever see your work and have an opinion about it. Just write it like you hear it, like you feel it, exactly in your own voice. Just write and start with free writing. Just like let your hand go, let your thoughts go, and let that translation happen between your hand and the pen, or between your hand and the typing pad. But just go, just start, and then see what happened. Like anything else is a skill that you get better at as you move along. But what makes my poetry different from the next person is that it's in my voice. That you read it and you're like, that, yeah, that's definitely Kai, you know? And that's the muscle you want to grow strong at the beginning. Styles and all of that, that comes along the way. But like hone the ability to speak in your own voice. That is such a good question. Okay. So the place where poetry, emotion, and nature meet is what you're asking about, right?
Yeah.
For me, I think I would say it's I think we all see the world through different lenses. Some of us are more pragmatic, more scientific thinkers. Some of us are more artistic thinkers. Some of us are more, I see poetry in everything. You know, I listen to a person speak and I very easily catch the patterns of their speech. I I'm in a place for several seasons and I easily see the patterns of that context. And there's something of poetry that is about patterns. It's about playing with the patterns of words, playing with the patterns of meaning, and doing so in a way that can tell a story that goes even beyond those words, that travels into the parts of our imagination that at times are stifled, bringing those places to life, traveling to the places in our emotions that are begging to be set free, are wanting to rise to the surface and saying, look, here, you're unshackled, go. And I feel like nature, being in natural spaces, being in forests, I mean, there's natural spaces go beyond the forest, but the reason why I talk about the forest is because that's like home. I feel so at home in the mountains, in the forests. And for me, being in the forest and seeing the way the plants interact with each other, the way they dance with each other, the just the poetry of their dance with the sun, you know, all these different plants, these different leaf structures, interacting with the sun, interacting with each other, supporting each other. Um, the dance between life and death, the inevitable dance between life and death, and how it facilitates, how death facilitates life and life facilitates death. And when it's happening well, each of them is fertilizing the other. But all of that to me is poetry, you know. And so if I am so blessed as to be able to bring that back and pack it into words on a piece of paper, on a screen, and be able to translate that and share it with someone that wasn't there to see what I saw, wasn't there to feel what I felt, but I'm able to bring that to them and they can feel what I felt or something that comes close to what I felt. Create a familiarity between them and the forest, act as the channel, the vessel through which they get to experience that. Ah, that's it. I think I could be wrong, but um, I think it starts with find find something that is natural. You know, it could be, I mean, taking on another living creature can be a lot of responsibility. So maybe for some people, it's bringing a plant into their home, or bringing a dog or cat into their home, or whatever other animal. I like snakes, so but I don't know that I can bring one into my home without people thinking I'm a witch out here. So I will not do it yet. But but it's find that even for people who feel like they don't have an emotional connection, there will be something, one thing that they find they lean into even a little bit. Find that thing, spend time with it, spend time sharing space with the natural, you know? And that's again, and I at times find that am conflicted with our language around nature, because a lot of the times it, it separates us from nature. But I haven't found a word yet that can refer to outside space, the plants and the animals that are not us, in I don't have one word yet. So we'll work with nature for now. Um, but go to a park, go to the lake, go to the river, go to the animal shelter, animal rescue spaces. Hang out with a dog, hang out with a cat, hang out with, like, go feed some pigeons. I don't know. Find something that it doesn't have to be joy. The emotion doesn't have to be joy, because that's the other thing that we imagine. It has to be. Some of my most powerful times in the forest have been pure rage. I just like grab onto a tree and just like go, because I'm like, there's emotions that I have that are not, that don't feel safe to release around people, you know. And we all have those sometimes, but in a forest, as long as you don't go in there with a saw or a machete and like chop things down, trees are actually very good at absorbing our emotions, good or bad. Just go sit under a tree, cry it out, cry it out, punch the tree. Maybe tell the tree you're going to punch it before you do. But he was like, so I'm going to punch, it's going to be hard. But like, it, it does not have to be a good emotion. It does not have to be a smile, laughter, joy. It could be anger. If you find a tree that makes you angry looking at it, go spend time with that tree. Be with it, hang out with it, see what happens. You know, it's to see what happens of it. It's a curiosity of it. Yeah. Find the thing that triggers your emotion, good or bad, positive or negative, and go spend time with it.